Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like you were staring into a mirror, only to realize later they were just reflecting you back at yourself? That's the deception of a narcissist. They don't see you, they study you, they learn your wounds, your hopes, your light, and then they use it all to control the narrative. Have you ever met someone who seemed to understand you instantly? As if they could see straight into your soul? They laughed when you laughed, shared your values, echoed your dreams. In the beginning, it felt almost magical, like fate had finally introduced you to someone who got it. But that perfect reflection wasn't real. It was a mirror, polished, practiced, and purposefully designed to make you believe in an illusion. That's the psychology of the narcissist's mirror. A narcissist doesn't show you who they are, they show you who you want them to be. Their entire identity is built on observation and imitation. They watch how you speak, how you love, how you respond to kindness and pain. They take mental notes on everything that makes you feel seen, and then they perform it back to you. In the early stages, this feels intoxicating. You think you've met someone emotionally intelligent, someone deeply aligned with your energy, but what's actually happening is far more calculated. At their core, narcissists lack a stable sense of self. They don't know who they are without external validation, so they become masters at mirroring, borrowing your emotional language, your moral compass, even your worldview, and reflecting it back until you're convinced of your connection. This is how they hook you. You fall in love not with them, but with the reflection of yourself shining in their eyes. Psychologically, this mirroring triggers a powerful attachment response. Your brain interprets the similarity and validation as safety. You start to associate that person with understanding, belonging, and love, the very feelings most people crave the deepest. That's why narcissistic relationships often feel like instant chemistry. It's not real chemistry, it's psychological manipulation dressed as compatibility. But the illusion doesn't last forever. Over time, cracks begin to show. You start to notice inconsistencies, how they can be affectionate one moment and cold the next, how empathy seems to vanish when it's inconvenient. Their reactions no longer match their earlier promises. The mirror starts to slip. And that's when the confusion begins. You wonder what changed, what you did wrong, how someone who seemed so emotionally attuned could suddenly be indifferent. The truth is, nothing changed. You're just seeing the person behind the mask. Here's the painful paradox. What initially drew you in, their ability to reflect your best self, is also what eventually destroys the relationship. Because once a narcissist feels they have your admiration, they no longer need to maintain the illusion. The reflection fades, and what's left is emptiness, the void they were hiding all along. The key to breaking free from the mirror illusion is awareness. The moment you realize that their validation was never about you, it was about control, the illusion loses its power. You begin to see that what you thought was love was actually a projection, a carefully constructed image built from your own light. And once you see that clearly, you stop trying to fix the mirror. You start reclaiming your reflection. A narcissist's power begins with projection, a psychological defense mechanism that allows them to cast their inner chaos onto others. They carry deep insecurity, shame, and emptiness within themselves, but instead of confronting it, they project it outward. They make you the container for what they cannot face in themselves. Suddenly, you find yourself walking on eggshells, feeling guilty, anxious, or unworthy, emotions that don't even belong to you. That's the hidden art of their manipulation, making their pain your responsibility. When you first meet a narcissist, it's easy to be drawn in by their charm. They appear confident, magnetic, and in control. But beneath that surface lies a fragile ego constantly threatened by exposure. To maintain their false image, they must shift blame and distort reality. This is where projection becomes their survival tool. If they feel inadequate, they'll accuse you of being ungrateful. If they feel jealous, they'll tell you that you're too insecure. If they feel guilt, they'll make you apologize for things they did. They rewrite the story until you start doubting your own truth. Psychologically, projection allows the narcissist to avoid accountability. They can't tolerate the discomfort of imperfection, so they transfer those unwanted parts onto others. This process creates a kind of psychological inversion. They accuse you of the very things they're doing. The liar calls you dishonest. The manipulator says you're controlling. The unfaithful one questions your loyalty. It's not just gaslighting, it's a deeply ingrained pattern of self-preservation at your expense. Over time, this projection starts to erode your sense of reality. You begin to internalize their accusations. You question your motives, your memory, even your sanity. You try harder to please them, to prove your goodness, but it never works. Because the pros. Blame was never you. The narcissist doesn't seek understanding, they seek domination of the emotional narrative. By projecting their flaws onto you, they keep their self-image clean and their power intact. It's important to understand that this pattern isn't random. It's psychological warfare. Every accusation is a diversion, a redirection of attention away from their own behavior. They want you to focus on defending yourself instead of recognizing their manipulation. And the more you defend, the deeper you sink into their projection trap. Breaking free from this dynamic begins with awareness. When you start noticing patterns, when their words no longer match your lived experience, that's the moment clarity begins to return. You realize their anger isn't about your actions, it's about their own reflection. Their criticism isn't truth, it's confession disguised as blame. The shift happens when you stop taking ownership of what isn't yours. You no longer absorb their insecurities or play the role they've cast you in. Instead, you quietly return what's not yours to carry. That's when their projections lose their power. Because projection only works when you accept it. Once you stop absorbing their narrative, the truth stands on its own, and you see them not as they want to be seen, but as they really are, a person terrified of their own reflection. Narcissists are masters of emotional investment, not in the sense of genuine connection, but in how they manipulate your emotions to keep you entangled. Their goal isn't love, it's control. Every word, every gesture, every moment of affection is calculated to make you feel indebted to them, responsible for their feelings, and afraid of losing their approval. In the beginning, this can look like passion. They give you intense attention, endless compliments, promises of a future that feels larger than life. It's not real intimacy, it's emotional bait. Once you're hooked, the dynamic shifts and the trap quietly closes. At first, you might not notice it. You justify the inconsistencies, telling yourself they're just stressed, tired, or misunderstood. But slowly, you begin to sense a change. The same person who once made you feel special starts making you feel small. Affection turns into criticism. Understanding becomes dismissal. And whenever you pull away, they reel you back in with sudden kindness, a tearful apology, or a declaration of love. This is the push and pull cycle that keeps you emotionally invested. It's not random. It's strategic conditioning. Psychologically, this works because of something called intermittent reinforcement. When rewards like affection or validation are unpredictable, the brain becomes addicted to seeking them. It's the same principle that keeps gamblers at the slot machine. Hope that the next pull will bring the win. In relationships with narcissists, this creates a powerful attachment. You crave their approval more intensely the less consistently they give it. You start working harder to please them, trying to earn back the version of them that once made you feel so seen. But here's the truth. That version of them was never real. It was a performance designed to hook your emotions. Once they know you care, they begin to ration attentis. On to test your loyalty. They measure your tolerance for pain, your willingness to sacrifice, and your fear of abandonment. Every time you forgive a cruel word or overlook a broken promise, they learn that you'll stay. So the manipulation deepens. The emotional investment trap works because it confuses love with survival. Your nervous system becomes trained to associate peace with their approval. You find yourself apologizing just to keep harmony, silencing your needs to avoid conflict, and doubting your worth every time they withdraw affection. What used to be love becomes dependency. The way out of this trap begins with recognizing that true love doesn't feel like anxiety. Genuine connection doesn't demand constant explanation, justification, or self-betrayal. It doesn't keep you guessing your value. When you begin to see how you've been emotionally trained to equate chaos with love, the illusion starts to fade. The narcissist's control only exists as long as you keep trying to win their affection. The moment you stop participating in the game, when you stop seeking validation from someone who profits from your confusion, you begin to take your power back. The trap loses its hold, and what once felt like love reveals itself for what it truly was, emotional manipulation disguised as intimacy. Awareness is the turning point, the moment when everything you've been trying to rationalize suddenly comes into focus. For so long, you might have been caught in a fog of confusion, questioning your own perception, rewriting your memories to protect the person who hurt you. But awareness slices through that fog like light breaking through a storm. It's not loud or dramatic, it's quiet and deeply unsettling. One day, their words don't make sense anymore, their stories don't add up. The person you thought you knew begins to look more like a stranger wearing a mask. That's the beginning of awakening. When you start observing instead of reacting, you shift the power dynamic entirely. Narcissists thrive on emotional response, your anger, your tears, your explanations, your efforts to prove your innocence. Those reactions feed their control. But when awareness settles in, something changes in you. You stop engaging in the same emotional dance. You no longer rush to fix what they've broken or explain yourself to someone who has already decided not to hear you. You start to see their patterns instead of their excuses. That's when they begin to lose their hold. Psychologically, awareness rewires your attachment to them. Before, your focus was external. You were constantly analyzing their moods, their needs, their reactions. You lived in survival mode, trying to predict the next emotional storm. But awareness pulls your attention inward. You begin to ask new questions. Why am I accepting this behavior? What am I afraid will happen if I stop trying? What part of me still believes I deserve this? These questions are painful, but they open the door to freedom. Because awareness isn't just about seeing the narcissist clearly, it's about seeing yourself clearly too. The process isn't instant, it unfolds in stages. At first, awareness feels like betrayal because you're final. You admitting that the love you believed in wasn't real, then it turns into grief as you mourn the version of them you wished existed. Eventually, it becomes empowerment. You realize that their manipulation can only continue with your participation, and you begin to withdraw your energy. You speak less. You observe more. You start trusting your gut instead of their words. A narcissist senses this shift immediately. They'll accuse you of being distant, cold, ungrateful. They'll try to bait you back into reaction because silence and clarity terrify them. Your calmness exposes their chaos. Your boundaries dismantle their control. And while they may try to regain dominance through guilt or charm, the truth is, once you've seen them, you can never unsee them. Awareness is not revenge, it's liberation. It doesn't require confrontation or exposure. It's the quiet reclaiming of your truth after being gaslit into doubting it. Once you understand that their behavior says everything about them and nothing about your worth, the entire structure of manipulation collapses. You realize you don't need to win, prove, or fix anything. You simply need to see. And in seeing clearly, you finally begin to heal. Unmasking a narcissist is not just about catching them in a lie or exposing their manipulation. It's about looking inward and confronting the reasons you tolerated their behavior for so long. The hardest truth is this: narcissists can only thrive where self-awareness is absent. They build their power on your hope, your empathy, and your belief in potential. To unmask them fully, you must first unmask yourself. That means asking the questions most people avoid. Why did I ignore the red flags? What made me stay when I knew something felt wrong? What did I need so badly that I accepted crumbs and called it love? These questions are painful, but they are the doorway to freedom. A narcissist cannot exist in a vacuum. They need an audience, an emotional mirror, someone to absorb their chaos and reflect back validation. When you stop providing that, their facade begins to crumble. But before that can happen, you have to take an honest look at the parts of yourself that craved what they offered. Maybe you were seeking approval or connection or redemption for old wounds. Maybe you mistook intensity for intimacy. Whatever the reason, you have to face it without judgment. Because healing doesn't come from blaming yourself, it comes from understanding yourself. The inner work of unmasking is not glamorous, it's messy, raw, and humbling. It requires you to see how you silenced your intuition, how you rationalized disrespect, how you accepted less than you deserved because you were afraid of being alone. The narcissist's manipulation only worked because they sensed those fears and used them against you. They mirrored your wounds back to you, not to heal them, but to control them. When you begin to see that clearly, you start to reclaim your power piece by piece. Psychologically, this process is about moving from external validation to internal authority. For so long, your emotions were tied to their reactions. Whether they praised you or punished you, you adjusted yourself accordingly. But when you begin doing the inner work, that dependence starts to break. You stop needing their approval to feel worthy. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop chasing closure from someone who benefits from your confusion. That's the moment the mask truly falls, because without your participation, the narcissist has nothing left to control. This inner transformation doesn't just end the relationship, it rewires your perception of love. You begin to see that love is not meant to hurt, confuse, or diminish you. Real love doesn't make you question your worth, it helps you remember it. As you grow in self-awareness, you start recognizing manipulation faster. You trust your intuition again. You no longer mistake chaos for connection or control for care. Unmasking the narcissist, then, is not about exposing them to the world. It's about revealing the truth to yourself. When you finally see clearly, their power dissolves. And what's left is not just freedom from them, but a deeper relationship with yourself. One built on honesty, strength, and unshakable self-respect. Clarity is freedom. It doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds slowly, like dawn creeping across a dark horizon. After the chaos, after the confusion, after the endless questioning of your worth, something inside you begins to settle. You stop trying to decode every word, every silence, every shift in their tone. You realize that the truth doesn't need translation. It's been there all along, waiting for you to see it. The narcissist's power has always depended on your confusion. The moment clarity takes root, that power dissolves. When you finally see a narcissist for who they are, the illusion collapses. All the charm, the drama, the intensity, it suddenly looks hollow. You begin to recognize the pattern behind their words, the manipulation in their kindness, the strategy in their vulnerability. Where you once saw complexity, you now see calculation. And though this realization hurts, it's also profoundly liberating. Because once you see clearly, you stop negotiating with delusion. You stop hoping that one more chance, one more conversation, one more act of love will fix what was never real. Clarity brings grief too. You mourn not only the person you thought they were, but also the version of yourself that believed in them. You grieve the time you lost, the energy you gave, the pieces of yourself you silenced to keep the peace. But grief is sacred. It's the bridge between illusion and truth. It's what cleanses the emotional residue of the past, allowing you to move forward with open eyes and a stronger heart. Psychologically, clarity is the restoration of cognitive balance. Narcissistic relationships create dissonance. They make you question what's real, what's imagined, and what's your fault. Once you reclaim clarity, that confusion unravels. You begin to separate your emotions from their manipulation. You realize their anger was projection, their affection was performance, and their love was conditional. This awareness doesn't make the pain vanish, but it transforms it into understanding, and understanding is what sets you free. As your clarity deepens, peace begins to replace the chaos. You start valuing silence over arguments, solitude over false companionship. You no longer crave their validation because you've learned that real peace isn't found in someone else's approval, it's found in your own self-trust. The same voice they taught you to doubt becomes the one that guides you home. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop explaining and start choosing. You stop surviving and start living. The freedom of clarity isn't loud, it's quiet, calm, and deeply grounding. You don't need to expose them or seek revenge. The simple act of seeing clearly is enough because clarity dismantles illusion. Once you recognize the truth, the narcissist loses the only thing they ever had over you: confusion. And in that stillness, you realize something profound. Their mask may have fallen, but you have risen. What they meant for control became your awakening. The truth didn't destroy you, it delivered you. Clarity became the doorway to your power, and that power is yours to keep.